Hello everyone, and welcome again to Nettle, the best platform around for distance learning in business, finance, economics, and much more. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell notification button below so that you never miss fresh videos and tutorials you might be interested in. Many thanks to our current Patreon supporters and YouTube members for making this video possible, and we'd also greatly appreciate if you consider supporting us as well, so please check the link in the description for more details. My name is Sava, and today we're going to investigate a key concept in statistics, that is kernel density estimation, or KDE for short. It is a powerful mathematical tool that can allow you to approximate the empirical probability density function of any empirical distribution you are interested in. And it is quite handy for many applications in finance and risk management. And it's quite an interesting analogy, because if you've got some time series, for example, like S&P 500 returns daily for a 5-year period from September 2016 until end of August 2021, you could obviously just rank them and then calculate the empirical cumulative distribution function quite easily, and we have done that so many times when modeling stock returns and investigating theoretical distributions. But what about the density? Here, the kernel density estimation is the mathematical trick you're looking for. First of all, as usual, we just have to rank those, and here the new sort function in Excel can come handy. So we can just select the whole array over here and apply the sort function, selecting the array of unsorted returns, selecting the sort index to be equal to 1 because we've got only one column, nothing else to sort really. Then we need to specify whether we want to sort them in an ascending or a descending order, and for distribution modeling you generally select ascending order, so 1. And then we need to select whether we want to sort them by columns or rows, and here we need to sort them by rows, so we select 0. And we close the brackets and enforce this formula, and we've got those S&P 500 returns ranked from lowest, minus 11.5%, to highest, 9.45%. And now, obviously, if you were to be interested in the cumulative distribution function, the empirical distribution function of S&P 500 returns, you would have just selected the ranks and divided them by the total number of observations, and you would have been good to go. That's not enough for a video, isn't it? But density is more tricky. How to estimate the derivative of something that you calculate using ranks and quantiles or percentiles of your data? Well, here a clever trick comes into play. You can calculate the approximation of the probability density function f small of x using this particular formula. You need to select a kernel function, and we'll touch upon what this function can be. It can be pretty much anything, to be fair. And you select a smoothing parameter h, which is also called the bandwidth of your kernel density estimation. The smaller it is, the more precise you can estimate your kernel density. However, it would lead to your estimation being noisy. So there is always a trade-off between how small this parameter can be, how large this parameter can be, how noisy your estimation turns out, or how biased this estimation turns out. And then you sum it up across all of your observation for a particular parameter x and adjust it for the sample size and for the bandwidth parameter you've selected. And obviously we can pick any kernel function and any bandwidth parameter, but there are some useful heuristics that we can acknowledge. So first of all, we need to calculate the sample size, just counting the initial returns, and we have got 1258. Then we can select the bandwidth that we want to proceed with, and just for illustrations, let's select the bandwidth to be equal to 1%, and then we can vary it, increase it or decrease it, and see how the result changes. And then we're actually good to go to calculate kernel density for every single of our observations here in the rank return column. So first of all, we need to account for the adjustment, so 1 over the bandwidth, the smoothing parameter, times the sample size in the denominator. And here we log the rows because those parameters do not change as we drag it across the whole sample. And then we need to account for this sum operator. So we sum, and here we need to select our kernel density function. And most commonly you would see Gaussian kernel functions, so just standard normal distribution probability density functions applied. You could also use anything else, from triangular functions to even something like a student's T distribution, or if you're feeling fancy or your stock returns are quite wildly distributed, you can even plug in a Cauchy probability density function. Why not? This tool is very flexible and you'll get a meaningful result whatever the function you apply. So here, let's just select the baseline case, the standard normal distribution, the so-called Gaussian kernel, so norm as dist. And here, as your z-stat, you input the difference between all observations xith and the point x where you're estimating your probability density approximation, and scale it by your bandwidth. So here we just subtract from the point we're estimating it currently in, the minimum point, minus 11.5%, and then we subtract the whole array from it, and in this array we lock the rows. Then we divide it, we scale it by the bandwidth over here, and we lock it row-wise again. And then we need to specify that our standard normal distribution function is a probability density function and not a cumulative distribution function. So we input 0 here, or false, whatever you prefer. Both ways work. And then we can close the parentheses and apply this function and calculate the kernel density estimation at this minimum point at 0.0365. And then we can bottom calculate it all the way down. It will automatically recalculate the density estimation at every single point in our sample, doing it quite fast and efficiently, as you can see. And we have got a graph of our probability density function approximation emerging over here. However, is this particular bandwidth parameter the best we could have done? There are some heuristics, some functions that you can use to pick an optimal bandwidth for particular data. However, let me just show you what happens to our estimation, to our end product, if we change this parameter. So if we make it very small, for example, if we make it 0.01%, our kernel density estimation will become very noisy. It would fluctuate quite wildly, reflecting the fact that your data is not perfectly distributed according to some theoretical function, but is quite chaotic at some point. However, if we increase it further, if we start increasing it from 0.01% to 0.05%, it will become smoother and smoother and smoother. And here is the trade-off that you face when estimating probability density using kernels, is that the smaller this bandwidth is, the more precise your estimation can be, the more reflective of the nature of your data it is. However, the more noisy it is. So here you face a very common problem in data science or any econometrics technique, to be fair, the bias variance trade-off. And you can allow your estimator to be less reflective of the nature of your data if it's more efficient, if it's less noisy and it has less variance. So that's why we're not sticking with the lowest bandwidth possible, something like 0.01%, but are willing to increase it further. However, if we increase it too much, for example, to 5% or even 10%, we can see how this estimation becomes more and more of a straight line, so not containing any information about the data at all. However, it's quite smooth, so that's a positive. But to optimize the trade-off between noisiness and information content of your kernel density estimation, you can use some of the formulas that could give you the best bandwidth possible, subject to some of your data characteristics. So the easiest go-to technique to estimate that would be this formula over here that relies on the standard deviation of your underlying data and the sample size, n. So here we can simply calculate the standard deviation, so sample standard deviation.s of our raw data, and we have got 1.2% as our standard deviation. And here we can already calculate the optimal bandwidth as per this particular heuristic. This relies on minimizing the mean squared error of your estimation, so it's quite common in optimizing Gaussian kernels, so kernels that rely on the standard normal distribution. And here we can plug in our standard deviation, multiply it by 4 divided by 3 times n, which is the sample size, and this parentheses we can raise to the power of 1/5. And that would give us a bandwidth of 0.31%, and here we can see that it is a reasonable trade-off between noisiness and bias. However, there are some improvements over this heuristic, particularly when your data is not normal, perhaps, and this is an improved, refined formula that has also got as its argument the IQR, the interquartile range of your data, which is basically the difference between the 75th and the 25th percentiles of your data. So we can calculate that and input this function as well and see how it will change the results. So in terms of interquartile range, we can simply calculate the difference between the exclusive percentile of raw data 0.75, so a third quartile, 75th percentile, and subtract the 25th percentile, the first quartile. And we have got the interquartile range estimated at 0.86. And again, why interquartile range is relevant here? Well, it is very similar to how you can estimate the scale parameter of the Cauchy distribution using the interquartile range, because, well, sometimes standard deviation is not that reflective of your data, given the fact that you can have quite heavy tails, and that's exactly the case for our empirical distribution with quite heavy outliers, extreme events influencing the standard deviation. So interquartile range is quite a bit smaller than standard deviation, as we can see here, and this is reflected in the second formula for bandwidth estimation. And reflecting that, we can input this formula over here, 0.9 times the minimum of the standard deviation and interquartile range divided by 1.34, and multiply it by sample size to the power of -1/5. And this gives us a smaller, more than twice as small of a bandwidth as a previous estimation. And we can see that this distribution estimation is more thin-peaked and more heavy-tailed, and it does preserve some of the noisiness of the original data. So whenever you have a data set that you're not sure whether it's normally distributed or not, use the second formula. That would be a better heuristic to use. However, something that I also promised you to cover is how to input another function, except the Gaussian function, into the kernel density estimation. And that would work just fine. For example, if we are interested in t-distribution, for example, if you suspect that your stock return distribution is quite heavy peaked, and it is perhaps a student distribution with quite small degrees of freedom parameter, you could reflect that. You could say that your kernel function would now be just the t distribution, and you can leave this particular scaled x untouched, and then we can just input the degrees of freedom over here, and for example, if you believe it's a degrees of freedom of 6 distribution, then we can change it accordingly, and then bottom left click it all the way down and see how the result changes. It doesn't really change that much, given the fact that t-distribution and normal distribution do converge when degrees of freedom are large. However, the smaller the degrees of freedom parameter is, for example, if it's 2, then we can see that the distribution does shift accordingly. And you can use any distribution function or any function at all and see whether your final result makes sense. And that's all there is for kernel density estimation in Excel for any empirical distribution and any candidate function. Please leave a like on this video if you found it helpful. In the comments below, I'm eager to see any further suggestions in videos for business, economics, or finance topics you would like me to record. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel or consider supporting us on Patreon. Thank you very much, and stay tuned.